Hello, this is Forrest Price, back with our 100 Mondays. We are up to number 19. I am not in a jovial mood today, so you won't find any fingers or anything to laugh about today because this subject is serious. I'm not even going to pray. The only prayer I want is for everyone to listen to this message and actually listen. All right. Number 19 is Georgia's new election law. Is it Jim Crow? Which is what I've seen on so many websites, and this is about voter suppression. So I'm assuming most people didn't even read it. I did. And out of every issue that I found, I could only, the two most important ones that they are trying to classify as it being Jim Crow is requiring on the voter registration that you turn in by mail that you will have to now put in a driver's license or a Georgia ID or the last four of your social security number. Which is the same thing you would have to do if you came in person. Last time around, you could just turn it in, and literally, if they mailed it to your house, you could have created a person, turned that in, and then drove to your polling place and voted in person, and that the one you mailed in would still count too. Yes. So what they're requiring is you to put your driver's license number on the form when you turn it in. And if you don't have that, your ID number. And if you don't have that, the last four of your social. Isn't the bigger problem, why don't you have any of them? And if you don't have any of them, you got 3.5 years to get one. What is the issue here? Second one, because I couldn't find basically anything that was racist in here. There was actually more things that were positive than negative I found in the bill. It's saying about drop boxes that they are restricted to one in every 100,000 active registered voters. So, the four biggest counties in Georgia will drop from 94 boxes to 23 boxes. They weren't there before. They were only there because of COVID. They could have eliminated all of them. They wasn't there before. It was only there for this reason. Now, it's a permanent thing. They're allowing them to have it. Now you have even bigger access where you didn't have it before. And who is this really going to affect? It's going to affect rural people who live out in the boonies. They literally would have to drive into Atlanta to go to a drop box because 100,000 people, you know how far they would have to drive? Literally, how far they would have to drive to find a drop box because it's every 100,000 people. When I went to my drop box, there was 2 that was in walking distance from my house and about 5 which was literally less than 5 minutes away from me. There were so many. So they're getting something permanent that they didn't have before. What is Jim Crow about that? How is that voter suppression? You're getting something you didn't have before, and it's now permanent, and it's affecting more people who live in the boonies than in the most populous places. People. And I mean, when I went to articles, all I see were people comparing this to Jim Crow. Do you know what Jim Crow was? Let me give you a history lesson on what Jim Crow was. Number one, it was violence. Yes, blacks who tried to vote were threatened, beaten, and killed. Their families were also harmed. Sometimes their homes were burned down. Often they lost their jobs or were thrown off their farms. How does that compare to those two things? Number two, you had to take literacy test. Today, almost everyone could read, but 100 years ago, many people, blacks and whites, were illiterate. Most illiterate people were not allowed to vote. How does this compare to these two things? Property test. In the South, 100 years ago, many states only allowed property owners to vote. Many blacks and whites did not own property, so they could not vote. How does this compare? The grandfather clause. People who could not read and did not own property were allowed to vote if their fathers or grandfathers had voted before 1867. Let me say that again. If their fathers or grandfathers voted before 1867, of course, no blacks voted before that time, so the grandfather clause did not kick in for us. How does this compare? Purges. From time to time, white officials would purge black peoples off the voter roll, which means often people would come in to vote and their names wouldn't be there, and you could only re-register after the election. Now, they are still doing that in some places where names are mysteriously, but you can still vote even if that happens on provisional voting. That didn't happen during Jim Crow. How does that compare? Poll taxes, yes, poll taxes. In southern states, people had to pay a tax to vote. Taxes would be roughly about $25 to $50 in this day and time. How much it would cost in this day and time. So think back then, even if you think that's a low amount, it was really around $50 in this same day and time. This did affect whites and blacks. But these are Jim Crow laws. Those two conditions have nothing to do with it. You can't compare it. It's an insult to even hear it. Stop listening to the tell lies vision. That is what the tell lie vision is telling you. And we are listening it, and it's getting in our heads, and we're telling other people. This has nothing to do with racism. This has to do with red versus blue. That is it. The red team lost in an area they never lose. So they have to do whatever it takes to win. Don't you know there's about 11 more states about to come out with the same law? Are you going to go down there and protest them? Are you going to stop conventions from going there? You gonna protest against Coke down there in Iowa when they about to do it? When there's hardly any black people? You gonna go down there? And why are we protesting against Coke? We should be protesting to not taste it because it's bad for our health. Isn't that the bigger issue? Churches. We know the dates that these applications have to be in. Have the applications at your church. Have everyone fill it out. Where's the problem? Where's the Jim Crow? Where is the racism? We have to stop making everything that is not about race and start focusing on our real problems. If you're listening to my series, all I'm talking about are our real problems. This is not a real problem. I'm done. Because I doubt anybody's going to listen, and I'm sure you're still going to listen to your blue team because you're entrained in your mind that the blue team is right, and that's why I hate the blue team. I hate the red team worse, but the blue team is just as bad as the red team. So I'm done. Next week, Number 20, our addiction to our phones. And let me get off my phone now.